Welcome back to Questing Beast. I'm Ben. Today's video is inspired by a video that I saw on the YouTube channel Dungeon Craft. Dungeon Craft is one of my favorite YouTube channels. I'm always excited when they drop a new video. I'll put links down in the description below so you can check that out for yourself. This video was focused on the rules that Professor Dungeon Master, who's the creator of Dungeon Craft, the rules that he does not use when running Dungeons & Dragons. And this really spoke to me, mostly because I really appreciate the perspective that the D&D rules aren't some sort of holy writ that you have to ascribe to. I think it's important to have a healthy disrespect for the official rules of Dungeons & Dragons. And this video really brought that across. But one thing that really struck me was how so many of the points in this video were focused on speeding up gameplay and making things faster, more efficient, and more tense at the table. And that struck me because that's a big priority for me too. One of the things that I hate the most when I'm running any kind of role-playing game is when it starts dragging. This can be in combat or out of combat, but just when the game is going on and on and on, you're waiting for your turn to do something, you're waiting for something interesting to react to and to build off of, but you're just wading through a lot of exposition and a lot of downtime. That's the worst. And so I thought today I would reflect on some of the things that Dungeon Craft talked about in that video and add some of my own thoughts as well about ways that you can dramatically speed up gameplay in Dungeons & Dragons. But before we get started, please head down below and subscribe to the channel if you are not subscribed. You can even hit the bell icon if you want to be notified when new Questing Beast videos drop. This is a really great and easy way to support the channel, and it makes sure that you never miss a new video. So let's talk about some of the ways that you can speed up your game of D&D. First of all, initiative. Initiative is a real sticking point for me. In almost any RPG where the initiative system is going to tell you what order all of the players have to go in one at a time, my experience is that it just slows down gameplay and doesn't add a lot in return. My favorite way to do this is simply to do side-based initiative. So all you do is you roll randomly, one die for the player side, one die for the monster side. Whoever rolls higher gets to go first. And then you just switch sides back and forth. This also means that on your side's turn, all of you can act at the same time. This is really great because it allows for planning, for simultaneous actions, combo moves, and a lot of player creativity that is harder to pull off when only one person is going at a time. It also has the really big benefit that it divides combat into two states. Either your state is, it's my turn to go or my whole team's turn to go, and we're planning and we're figuring out how we're going to use this situation to our advantage, or the monsters are attacking you. Those are the only two states that you find yourself in. Both of those are inherently interesting and will catch the player's attention and keep them focused on the gameplay. There's no state where you have nothing to do. And in standard initiative systems where one person's going at a time, a lot of the time at the table, you will just have nothing to do. So I think that initiative's a really big deal, and any way that you can strip it down to make it simpler and cleaner is a big plus. I know that Professor Dungeon Master over on Dungeon Craft is also a big fan of side-based initiative, but he also talked about doing simultaneous initiative, which is really interesting. I've done simultaneous initiative before, and I found that it is much easier to run than you expect it to be. He has some really great videos on that topic that you should check out. But some people do find that kind of intimidating just because they're not used to the mental framework of how you're going to get everything going at the same time and how conflicts of interest will play out and so on. So if that's you, then please try out side-based initiative first. I think you'll find it easier. It's really fast and simple to do, and I think it gets players a lot more engaged. Next up is sense of urgency. So one way to get players engaged and to keep the game moving forward at a rapid pace is making sure that there is always a threat of some kind. There's something to react to. There's pressure being put on the PC group whenever possible. So in Professor Dungeon Master's videos, he looks at adding timers. So either little beeper timers that you might find in categories or even sand timers or things like that, so that players know they have a limited amount of time to act. And if they don't make a choice fast enough, then they simply lose their turn. I have done things like that in the past, although I haven't used timers per se. I might kind of count down in my head. But typically what I do is I just try and reinforce the dangers that are present right there in front of the players, right? There's a monster charging straight at you with a spear. Decide what to do. You have a limited amount of time. Go, go, go. and that helps get them in the right mindset. However, if they are doing side-based initiative, which I mentioned before, and I notice that the players are really planning things out and they're working together and they're coming up with a scheme, often involving working simultaneously, then I will frequently give them extra time, because that sort of tactical considerations are really great. They're extremely fun and they make for really great stories. And I like to see the players thinking. So whenever I see them engaged with that, then, give them a break. Don't push them too hard, because I want to see what they come up with. My third point, and this is one that I don't see many people talk about at all, is to try standing while you are running the game. These days, I basically don't sit down at all while running Dungeons & Dragons. I'm standing, I'm often pacing, I'm walking around the table, I'm pointing at stuff. You're over here, the monster's over here. If these things are happening, what are you going to do? I find that this really energizes me. It makes me feel more alert and more awake. And by pacing around, I think better as well. Like my mind is moving faster. It also prevents me from feeling more lethargic and sitting down and flipping open a book and just kind of pondering what's going to happen next. I don't have the option of doing that when I'm standing and moving. And I think that really it adds a sense of urgency to the whole thing, and it keeps things moving faster on my end. So I'm not inclined to bog things down at all. So my fourth point is that if you are running a pre-written adventure, try and get adventures that are designed to be easy to run in play. I feel like this is a real problem throughout a lot of officially published D&D adventures, where they might have some interesting encounters and ideas in there, but it's not so easy to pull those out in the moment. So what I'm thinking of is what I call control panel formatting. And that's where you have every unit of information, whether that be a room or a rule or things like that, are kept on either one page or on a 2-page spread. So that when you are running that section of the adventure, you don't have to flip back and forth. Things like bullet points and bolding help pull your eye to exactly what you need to see and the most important things to know. Any monster stat blocks are right there on the page rather than being at the back of the book where you have to flip back to them. I see a lot of books, especially in the OSR, that do that really well. So a good example of that is Winter's Daughter, which I have done a review of previously. And another great thing about this book is it has all these cheat sheets, and it has things like at the beginning, you can see the maps here, and there's like summaries of what's in every room on the map itself, which allows you to get this great overview of everything that's going on. And that's not something that's done enough either. Also, the small format of this book, the small size of it, makes it so that I can actually open the book with one hand. I can hold it like this and run it like this while I'm walking around and talking to the players. I can quickly look back at the book, check what's going on, and then get back to the game again. It's really, really great. And I wish more books did that. But if the adventure that you're running isn't designed that way, it can be really helpful to try and create a cheat sheet like that ahead of time. A lot of times that will just mean maybe photocopying the map and jotting down all of the important locations and encounters with little descriptions to reduce the amount of time you have to spend looking through the book. Because you really don't want to spend time running the game doing research. You want to get things as fast and fluid as possible. All right, point number 5 is to speed up combat by reducing the hit points of everything across the board. Or on the other hand, you could increase the damage of everything. This is a piece of advice that I've heard on Dungeon Craft quite a few times, and I think it's a really good one. If you're running old school D&D, this is kind of done for you already, because in general, the hit point bloat is lower. But even at very high levels in early D&D, you can get this situation where it just takes forever for anything to really be injured. You have like these hit point bars that are slowly ticking down over the course of combat, and you're just waiting for something interesting to happen. So what you want is a system that gets to that interesting decision point faster. You want to get to the point where you're not sure whether you're going to survive or when something is about to die, whether that's a monster or a PC. And that's the interesting point, because that's where decisions are made. So how do you get to that faster? Just reduce the hit points so you have less of this intermittent period where it's just hit points slowly going down without any meaningful change in the combat. It just cuts out so much cruft and the game just goes faster, and players will enjoy it more because there's more interesting decisions to be made. My 6th point is consider adding a morale system to your D&D combat. Most people, especially in more modern versions of D&D, don't use morale, where it's more built in if you look at earlier versions of D&D. But it really does speed up combat, and I think it adds a lot more tactical decision making. than you find in games where the objective is just to kind of slog through the dead and just kill everything in order to proceed. Basically, how morale works is you should look at monsters, especially ones that are somewhat intelligent, and try and figure out, would this monster really keep fighting at this point? So look for those decision points. So maybe you kill off the monster's leader, or perhaps you kill off half of their force. At those points, a monster would be wondering, maybe this isn't worth it anymore. I want to live, and it doesn't look like I'm winning. Now, a lot of times PCs are kind of suicidal, but when NPCs are always suicidal, then I feel like it breaks down the immersion of the world, and it makes everything just take a really long time. So consider adding a morale system, perhaps using the monster's wisdom as a kind of morale stat, and make a check when you think it's appropriate. This will also add interesting complications. For example, the monsters could run off and get reinforcements, or if they surrender, you have to consider, what are we going to do with these prisoners of war, and what are the consequences of capturing them, killing them, etc. My seventh and final piece of advice would be to unbalance the encounters. This might seem a little strange at the beginning, but I feel like a lot of the drag that comes from combat is the way that, especially modern editions of D&D, really focus on making sure that encounters are balanced. But by balanced, it means that players are expected to fight it and usually kill it and take up about 1/4 of the player's resources in doing so. When you're designing encounters like that, and especially when players know that you're designing encounters like that, they're going to feel motivated to fight everything. And then those fights are going to take a while because they're designed to give the players a challenge. They're supposed to spend a while and a bunch of resources getting through this fight. But that becomes monotonous and it becomes repetitive and it makes the game just take a long time. There's not a lot of variety in encounters like that. So think about unbalancing stuff where either monsters are far less powerful or far more powerful than the PCs. This will add a bunch of advantages. First of all, players will have to perk up and pay attention because they don't know if what they're encountering can be killed. Or they might discover that what they're encountering is much less powerful than them and they can turn it to their advantage. Perhaps if they find some very low-level minions, they might think, oh, perhaps we can just frighten them away. Perhaps we can just kill them really quickly before they know what hit them. Perhaps we can intimidate them and force them to work for us. There's more variety there. Similarly, if you have a much more powerful enemy, now don't trap players in a room with a much more powerful enemy and force them to fight it. That's boring. But you can have them encounter things that are way out of their league, because this will, again, add more variety to the game. It will allow them to think things like, maybe I should, cower and try and trick it to believe that I'm on its side now. I can bargain for my life. Maybe I need to run for my life and we can have a chase scene. There's a lot of other things that can happen. Players might get captured. And yeah, you're just not going to get these very consistent half hour to 45-minute fights, kind of one after another. Players won't know what to expect. Also, the really big advantage is that these encounters that are on the extremes, so a very easy encounter or a very hard encounter, are much shorter than ones that are in the middle and that are balanced. Because combat is usually not really something that you need to worry about on either end of the spectrum. Either you're going to be running away or it's going to be over really fast. So consider unbalancing your encounters just to add more spice and more variety and to speed things up if you want combat to not always feel like it's the same 30-minute fight every time. All right, that's my 7 tips for speeding up your game of Dungeons & Dragons. If you like this video, remember to give it a like and subscribe if you're not subscribed to the channel yet. Big shout out to Dungeon Craft and Professor Dungeon Master for inspiring this video. Please head down to the description and check out his channel for yourself. He's really great stuff. He puts out a video about every week and they're really consistently great. I really look forward to them. It's one of the few channels that I find is really thought-provoking, no matter what he's saying. Even when I disagree with his videos, it gets me thinking and I really appreciate his point of view. So really great channel. Go check it out. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you guys next time.